What the whole lawsuit against LuLa Roe being a pyramid scheme was about was that they were actually a pyramid scheme and people were getting bonuses based on what they purchased rather than what they were actually selling to an end consumer. Well, one of those women that was up there, her name was Kim Roylance. She was my very toppity mega hun. She's still in the company. She's like Deanne's bestie. They're super gross. She was the one that told everybody to sell their breast milk to be able to pay for LuLa Roe. That was her. So she... It's like the mega hun, get these huge checks. She was the first LuLa Roe consultant to accumulate over $1 million in bonus checks. And she was presented one of those Publishers Clearinghouse checks at convention one time, like $1 million that she had collectively earned up to that point.
Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in Richland County history. Dr. John Boyle is accused of killing his wife Noreen and burying her body in the basement of his new home in Erie, Pennsylvania.
The 12-year-old son finally took the stand.
As I heard a scream, I heard a thud. It was about this loud.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
When I was 12 years old, my testimony sent my father to prison for murdering my mother. This podcast serves as a type of therapy and reconciliation for myself, and it is my hope that it helps anyone who has experienced deception, betrayal, and dark trauma.
I'm Collier Landry, and this is Moving Past Trauma.
Hey movers, welcome back to another episode of Moving Past Trauma. I'm your host, Collier Landry, and what's going on? Thank you all for tuning in. I am very excited today because I have a guest who I have been really just itching to talk to ever since I saw her on a documentary which was called LuLa Rich, which is on Amazon, which is about, for those of you that were really into the leggings, that were really big on Facebook and all these marketplaces, eBay, whatnot, people were clamoring for them. And while I can't understand the excitement around leggings, I do remember Beanie Babies and the hysteria that was surrounding Beanie Babies. So I think a lot of this was very parallel to the LuLa Roe leggings. So I'm really pleased to have Roberta Blevins join me today. She is a mother and an MLM advocate. She hosts a podcast, Life After MLM. I hope I didn't butcher that. And she's just a really cool person. She lives out here in California with the rest of us sunshine seekers. Roberta, how are you?
I'm good. I lost my voice a little bit. I was just camping this weekend and we were doing trail angeling for PCT hikers who are starting down here at the South Terminus because I live in San Diego. And every time we had a hiker come into our camp, we would scream, woo! So I've lost my woo. My woo is gone.
That's all good. So what is this exactly? Because you messaged me about this and I was like, what is this PCT? So tell me a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So the PCT stands for the Pacific Crest Trail. Anybody who is a hiker, a through hiker, or a section hiker probably knows it is one of the more grueling hikes in the United States. Although because we have really great national parks over here on the West Coast, it is really beautifully maintained. But it basically takes you from Mexico to Canada. It's like 26, almost 2,700 miles.
Hold on. So is it 2,700 miles to Canada from the border?
From Mexico, I don't know the exact, but it's big. And so I'm not a through hiker. I don't think you'll ever see me on the trail for more than a few days, but I love to section hike. So I've section hike on the PCT and I've just day hiked on the PCT because it's out here. But one of the things I love to do, because I'm more of a camper personally, is we do what's called trail angeling. And anybody who's been on a trail knows they look for trail magic when they're out there. A couple days of just eating ramen or dehydrated food in your pack, you come across a sign that says there's trail magic 1 mile this way. And then when you get there, the first night we did hamburgers and hot dogs, and then we did breakfast burritos in the morning. We did spaghetti night the next night. We make sandwiches. So when the hikers come in, as they're unpacking, they can grab a sandwich. There's a hiker cooler with beers and sodas and Yoo-hoo and Capri Sun, anything you could imagine that you would be like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need after 3 days of wilderness. And then a whole table with all kinds of single serving condiments that they can take with them to zhuzh up all of their meals on the trail, fruit, snacks, all kinds of stuff. And then also a a place that we provide for them to camp for the night. So they've got, we get like a bunch of spots, and it's really fun. The last night was tacos and beer, and we had,
I love that.
I think there was like 60 people at the campsite. We fed at least 50 plus hikers. It's amazing. And you get to meet so many people from and as a podcast host, it's like live podcasting. So I'm going around, I'm like, hi, where are you from? What's your name? Why are you doing this? How do you, like, that's my question is like, where are you from? How far are you planning to go? Because some people just do parts. Some people are planning to go the way. And then also, how did you fund this trip? Like, do you just have a really great job? Were you able to take the time off? Like, how did you, because it takes, if you do the whole thing, it's going to take 5 to 6 months. So what's the luxury in your life that you have the ability to take a half a year off to walk across the country? And people have really interesting stories, and it's just a really fun, it's a really fun experience. If you ever have the opportunity to trail angel, it's really fun.
You were in a documentary that I had seen a couple of years ago, I guess now, called LuLa Rich, about an MLM company that, I mean, I think they all go sideways, but this was this was something else.
Yeah.
So the company was LuLa Roe.
Yes.
And they made these leggings. That was like the thing, right?
Yeah, that's what they were known for, but they made all kinds of stuff, and they still exist, and they still make clothes to this day. But mostly women's clothes, and mostly like very comfortable, stretchy, not clothes that were like sized with numbers, but more like small, extra large. It's very stretchy stuff, very forgiving, and also brightly colored, brightly patterned. And then because it was a Mormon company, all of the clothes actually were long enough to cover garments as well. So
what do you mean by that?
So Mormon, the garments that they wear underneath their clothes, which is one of their beliefs, they come down, like I think the women's come to here. So like all of their shirts were longer than that, so that like your garment wouldn't be showing.
Hold on.
It's I'm not Mormon, and I don't want to like
under a shirt. Is that what they do?
But it's like they wear the shirt and then they wear their bra and underwear over the garments. Like the garments are what touch your skin because they're blessed. You buy them from the temple. They're blessed and you wear them and they protect you. And then you put like your underwear and everything on top. My best friend is working her way out. And so my questions are answered from her, but she's like, I don't know why. Like, I just do as I'm told, basically. So I'm sure there's somebody listening who knows exactly, but I think the theory and the belief is that the garments are blessed, and so you're protected by the garment.
This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. So, hey, movers, as you guys all know my story about my trauma. My father murdered my mother when I was 11 years old. I witnessed it happen, and I testified in court and put my father in prison. And that story comes with a lot of baggage. And even though I got through that trauma as a child, it didn't really start creeping back up to me until I was an adult. And it started manifesting itself in a lot of different ways where there was a lot of boundaries that I allowed others to cross. I got into bad relationships. You know the drill. But one of the things I found that really helped me was speaking to a trained professional. And I got the help that I needed. So if you guys are thinking about starting therapy, I cannot suggest a better resource than BetterHelp. So visit their website, go fill out their online questionnaire, and they'll get you matched up to a licensed therapist that can really help you move on to that next phase of your life. Visit BetterHelp.com/MPM to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/MPM.
And they did an episode of South Park where they talk about like Mormonism, and they call them magic underwear. So it's the Mormon magic underwear is what they're known by. It's sort of like, but they're like temple garments. They're like bike shorts. And the men and the women wear them. They're like bike shorts and yeah, I know. Mormon sacred garments to cover your sacred gardens. Anyway.
Oh my goodness. So let's see. So they made these leggings and tops and all this stuff. So what was the frenzy? And you got into this at what time? What year?
I first heard about it in 2015, which was when I was starting to get really wild. Mm-hmm. And I joined in March of 2016.
So were you a customer first? Were there friends that were?
I was a customer, but only because I was doing market research. So I was a stay-at-home mom, and my now ex-husband, I wanted to come home and be more home. And I was working out of town. I was working in Santa Monica doing hair like once a month. I would drive up from San Diego for the whole weekend. And as my daughter got older, it was harder because she's in school and I'm missing things. I'm missing like being able to volunteer or like do these things. So I'm looking around and I'm looking to the future going, I need to find something that's going to bring it home. And I was working at home too in a salon, but I had worked in LA. And so I had a really good clientele that brought in like a substantial chunk of money that I couldn't just cut off and be like, oh, well, like I needed to replace it. And so I started thinking like, how can I replace this? I was looking at a lot of different things. I was blogging. I was doing a bunch of different things, like bringing money in as us neurodivergent ADHDers, ADHD, I can't even say it right now. You know what I mean? ADHDers do. Inventing words on the fly is another one of those things. So I needed to bring something home and like make it easier for me to be home. And I saw somebody on Facebook who was talking about these really great leggings. And I wore a lot of leggings as a stay-at-home mom. And I was like, oh, those are kind of, bright and wild, but they look comfy. And she's like, oh, they're super comfy. And so I bought a pair. And I bought she was selling like used pairs that she had like didn't like anymore or whatever. She had lost weight and she didn't fit in them or something. So I bought them for like $5 just to see. And I was like, oh, these are comfy. And that was the first time I ever put on LuLa Roe or ever tried it. It was a $5 pair that I had bought off somebody. And I was like, these are super soft and thick. And at the time, back in 2015, they were. And so I started looking. I was like, I'm going to find a black pair, like holy grail. I thought it'd be easy and it wasn't. And so in looking for this black pair of leggings, I was like, why is it so hard to find like the most basic color? I was not on the pyramid scam side of it. I'm still on the consumer and like, could I do this? And I'm like, is it just so popular that like people just can't keep black in? Like it's so popular, it's flying off the shelves. So I started joining groups to sort of do market research and to see if I could find what I was looking for. And what I saw was it was just people could not keep it in stock. And I started thinking to myself, like, I could sell this. I could do this. This is so easy. It's just people sitting on their couch being like, sold 4, sold 7. You know what I mean? Like just whatever. They're just like, and people are like buying. And I'm just like, I could do this. Like I could do this. And so that was the first seed. And then from there, it was trying to prove my husband, who was like, you have a lot of stuff going on. Like, do you need to do this? And I'm like, well, it's going to replace the other thing. It's going to replace. So like, yeah, like you got to hustle so that, and he was like, I don't know. It wasn't so much it was a pyramid scheme or that he thought it was a scam. He really thought that I was just taking on way too much and that starting an at-home business would just be way too much. And it was, and he was right. But I was like, I can do this. And eventually after a couple months, I like wore him down essentially. And he's like, if you're going to do it, like go get your own credit card, go get your own bank account, go get your own thing that's separate from the family money and manage it on your own. Like if it goes down, like it needs to be separate. And I was like, all right. Smart hindsight, right? I was like, okay. So I went and I did that. And I remember like my upline who you join and like who recruits you and who you join under, they were like almost weekly in this like 3 to 4 month span from the moment that I decided this might be a good idea to the moment I signed the papers. It was like, what'd your husband say this week? Did you show him the thing we sent you? Did you show him my income? Did you have him watch that thing? Did you want him to talk to my husband who felt the same way when I joined? Things like that, So there was a lot of like just indoctrination that was coming out from like so many different angles. And, of course I'm saying yes, because I'm trying to convince him as well. So I join and everything's good. Everything's going great. People are like joining underneath me. They're like, I want to be with you. I heard about LuLa Roe and I saw that you were doing it. You're the person I want to be under. I was like, okay. I really never had to approach anybody, never had to recruit anybody. It always came to me. People were very interested. I gave them as honest of answers as I possibly could. And people just wanted to join it because it was so incredibly popular at the time. Like it was just like flying off the shelves. Like I said, like everybody wanted a part of this. Anyway, so that's sort of like how it started. That was the beginning. That was before I saw like a lot of red flags, just a few red flags.
But this is 20, you say March of 2016 when you joined. So
yeah.
so how long you were in it for quite a while, I believe, right?
I was in it for 18 months. It seemed like a lot longer, but when I did the counting, I was like, oh, it was only like 18 months. Um, it was a whirlwind of a year and a half, though. I'll tell you that. I just once you get in, like a lot of people, I don't know what it was. Like a lot of people, I think, get in, and if they don't find early success, they kind of like say, I'm not into this. And they move on to another one, or they leave, and they go, I'm not a great salesperson. But I had pretty early success. And all those people joined underneath me. I had pretty good sales. I'm a personable person. And I already knew how to sell. Being a hairstylist, I know how to sell myself. I know how to talk to people. Yeah. And so I think it just came really easily. Again, everybody wanted it. And I didn't really start to notice like anything bad. The first like red flag maybe that I really registered as a red flag, though looking back hindsight, right? There was a lot more. But the first red flag that I actually like registered were getting like damaged leggings in the mail. And the way that they treated that entire thing. I think that was probably the first time that I was like, I thought this was supposed to be a business. That was like the first, like, this doesn't make any sense for me. Sending me damaged items and then like gaslighting me about it.
Yeah. So that's, and how far into it were you? How many months into it when you started is that something they did right away? They were like, oh, she's sending active orders, or was it a little less, less egregious than that? They just were really bad at their business and they just sent crap.
I don't think it was necessarily that egregious. I think they're just stupid. In my opinion, in my experience, I think they're just stupid. And I think that they just messed things up and they hoped that it would be like cast enough wide that not many people would be able to talk to each other and say that happened to me too. So it was like, it would be like one thing in an order. It wouldn't be like the whole order. Right. So it'd be like one little thing where you're like, this is annoying, but I'll set it aside and move on because I'm not going to spend hours on one item. And I think that also sort of was like, there's this whole like, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's like one thing mentality of things. Like a lot of times people won't return things at stores because it's like, it's not, I'll just give it to my kid or like, I'll just give it to my friend or whatever, And so there's this, it didn't cost me a ton of money. So it's not a huge loss. And it seems like the frustration of having to go about returning it is more than what it's worth to me. So, excuse me, I have like a hiccups. Like that's how it sort of was. I get like one item or two items and I'd be like, this is weird. And they'd be like, it's so strange. It's never happened before. And I'm like, it literally happened last week. I emailed you about this last week. It happened literally 7 days ago. Why are you telling me it's never happened before? It was that sort of thing. I got stuff that like reeked like death. Like I've smelled like, I'm from the country. Like I know what a dead rat smells like.
Yeah.
So when I said it smelled like dead rats, that's what it smelled like. It smelled like dead rats. It smelled like dead animals. It was horrific. It stunk up my whole house. Like the whole next morning, it smelled like a fart. I was like, what happened in here? Dead rat. Like it was really strange. Stuff soaking wet. And not just like leggings. I had shirts and like dresses that were also soaking wet in different orders. And it was, it eventually stopped. And I think that's why I probably stopped pursuing it as well. But it was hindsight's 2020 when you look back and you get more, not all, but a lot more of the puzzle pieces to be able to put together and look at it. So going back, that was the time that they were storing everything outside. And we didn't know that.
Yes.
We didn't know they were storing things outside. So being in Southern California, the condensation in the morning, it's more than enough to make something wet enough that when you ship it, it's still kind of wet when I get it. One thing that was maybe on the edge of a pallet that was outside. We also started talking to people when the documentary came out. People were like commenting on TikTok and things like that and going, oh, I used to work for them and this happened to me. And someone said like that her and her boyfriend's job very briefly at LuLa Roe was to go around in the morning and pull out all the dead rats and possums and skunks and things that had crawled into those big metal Gaylord bins overnight and died and gotten trapped and died. So I was like, okay, well, check number 2. There's I said dead rat and you're telling me you're pulling dead rats off of them. So it's that kind of stuff that we see like later on. But like in the time, I just felt crazy because I'm like, no, it stinks really bad. And they're like, just put it in the freezer and the freezer will kill the stink. And then you can sell them at a discount. And I was like, so I now have to like put them in the freezer, sell them at a discount to get my money back when you could just give me my money back right now? Why am I taking the hit? Why do I have to do all this work to get my money back? Why can't you just give me my money back? So it's those things, right? Like being a hairstylist and working in the salon. I'd been working in the salon for like 15 years at that point. Anytime something that didn't work, a person came in and said, I tried this shampoo. I don't like the way it smells and I can't. Okay, no problem.
Yeah,
when that rep comes in, that rep goes, hey, you have any returns? And I go, oh yeah, my client hated the way it smelled. She goes, oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Here's a new one for your salon to sell. I'll take this one. Here's a brand new one. No problem. I'm so sorry that you even had to have this conversation with me. Here's a free item. Like it was
right.
like, that's how it is in a regular business. And so when I was not afforded that same courtesy as their customer like that, I was like, this is not how you run a business. Like I'm supposed to be right. You're supposed to say, oh my God, you got dead rats. Like that's horrible.
Like, why do they smell? Why are they damp? I can't believe they sent you damaged product.
As opposed to,
don't even bother
as opposed
shipping
to
them
like
back.
weird. So
put those in the freezer and see if you can recover it. But we're going to send you new ones. And if you can, bonus for you. You can sell them or do whatever and give them to your friends.
It was a total nightmare.
Now, is that how you get the smell out though? You freeze stuff?
That's what they said. I never tried it. I packaged them up. I sealed them up real good. And I wrote like stinky leggings on them. And I hid them in like the back. And I didn't even remember I had them until after I had left LuLa Roe and I was cleaning out my LuLa Roe. Hey, RK, I was cleaning out my LuLa Roe stuff. And I was like, oh, the stinky leggings. I wonder if they're still stinky. And they were. They
were made by machine, correct?
They were so stinky.
And they were made by machine, right? Because there was a lawsuit, correct?
They had it was machines and people. So machines cutting and people manning the machines. But machines, they're not hand sewing it like this. They're using machines to sew. But it is people manning the machines. And they were made in a variety of places. When I joined, it was made in the USA. It got so big they had to outsource. So it was being made in Thailand. It was being made in China. I think there was some in Indonesia. I'm not sure. There were a lot of different places. Then there was like rumors of sweatshop stuff. Then LuLa Roe started going down to like prove it was okay and like showing pictures and all of these things. And then on the back end, when I was trying to figure things out and I was working, trying to find evidence against LuLa Roe, I actually had a contact in China who was in the manufacturing district. And he was like, I need to talk to, he's like, LuLa Roe's not paying. And this was before anybody knew. He's like, LuLa Roe's not paying their bills. And I said, what do you mean? And he showed me pictures. He's like, these are all pallets full of leggings we made for them that they can't take because they haven't paid. And they're just sitting here. And he's like, and all of these workers are out this money because nobody can be paid because LuLa Roe's not paying their bill. And I said, what's going to happen? He's like, if they don't pay by a certain time, like they'll be auctioned off. And then a few months later, you start seeing them pop up in Marshalls and they're popping up in Australia and they're popping up like all over. And the consultants who have no idea what's going on because they think I'm a loser liar who just wants to, spread lies and burn everything down. I'm like, we told you LuLa Roe's not paying their bills. Here's the proof. And then everything started showing up everywhere. And then like a month or two later, there was a huge $1 billion lawsuit that was like, hey, LuLa Roe hasn't been paying us. And I was like, I told you, but I knew that because that was the lawsuit that I was gathering evidence for. But I was like, I knew this was happening and nobody wanted to believe us. Nobody wanted to believe anything that we were finding. There's been 3 documentaries made about this company and people are still like, nah, no. Like, yeah, yes. Oh my God, like what? It's like a comedy of errors. I mean, you have to understand I'm out of this for so long. So for me, it's hilarious. For me, it's like an Abbott and Costello movie or something.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, absolutely. How does this keep happening?
It's a Marx Brothers skit.
Marx Brothers, absolutely. It's just, there's so many things. There's so much.
Well, dare I say it? It's a South Park episode. It's really what it is.
It's like a South Park season. There's so much. I think if anybody could condense the story of LuLa Roe down, like the whole story into 30 minutes, it would be Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
Absolutely.
If they want to do that, they can call me. I'll help them out.
I mean, 3 documentaries. I didn't know that there was 3 documentaries about this. And so I remember watching the film and I thought to myself, so there's the husband and wife, right? Whatever their names are.
Mark and Deanne.
Yeah, I wanted to call them Jim and Tammy
Jim and Tammy Faye.
But I just they are exactly. They are just, oh, but this is a business that you can support your family on, and there are people making money, and what, talk to me about the leaders of the or whatever they are in the hierarchy. I don't know what.
Yeah, I call them mega huns.
Mega huns. Okay, so the people that were in charge that are showing their checks, that are getting $150,000 checks for being superstar gold level, but really that doesn't show the $140,200 they just spent to get that $150,000 check. It's all smoke and mirrors. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, it was really interesting the way that the Tops and LuLa Roe did that, because for a while, and what the whole lawsuit against LuLa Roe being a pyramid scheme was about, was that they were actually a pyramid scheme, and people were getting bonuses based on what they purchased rather than what they were actually selling to an end consumer. So, you could buy a ton of stuff and then you'd get a bonus on it. So, or the people above you would get bonuses on it. So, you could, to qualify, you could just buy stuff to qualify. You didn't actually have to have sales or anything. You could literally just buy it all. So a lot of these tops, and I think I told you about that video that I took at a convention where everybody was on stage and they were like, my name is Becky and my first check was $470. And my last check last month was $165,000. And then everyone's like, wow, Becky, yeah. And then it goes on to the next person. And it's even more outrageous and it's even more absurd. Well, one of those women that was up there, her name was Kim Roylance. She was my very toppity mega hun. She's still in the company. She's like Deanne's bestie. They're super gross. She was the one that told everybody to sell their breast milk to be able to pay for LuLa Roe. That was her. So she was like the mega hun, get these huge checks. She was the first LuLa Roe consultant to accumulate over $1 million in bonus checks. And she was presented one of those Publishers Clearinghouse checks at convention one time, like $1 million that she had collectively earned up to that point. So that's how big this woman was or is. What? So she had so much LuLa Roe because she's buying her bonus every month, because she's got so many people underneath her. She has to hit a certain amount to be able to hit her check to get her check, right? That she had a freaking basement full. It was so much. And she would go live and you could see how much she had. And then she also would do these things where she was bringing things back from the vault, vintage. If LuLa Roe was a year old or something, prints that were older than a year were called vintage in LuLa Roe. And so she had these prints that at the time nobody wanted, but now because these prints are so shitty, those old prints that kind of sucked are looking pretty good. So she'd open the vault like she's a Disney princess or something and say, oh, we have all these limited edition, LuLa Roe vintage. And I'm like, it's all the shit she bought to make all of her bonus checks. That's what it is. But she makes it seem like it's something magical. And I'm like, it's just front loading, which is essentially buying everything to qualify for your bonuses, which all MLMs do. LuLa Roe is just not as secretive
about it, or super secretive about it.
They were a little more obvious, right? With their pyramid-y scheminess, right?
A little more overt.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. Mm-hmm.
But when you say all MLMs do this is the way.
It's just inherent. It's just that here's the thing, an MLM is not going to work the way that the MLM wants to work without this sort of cult in it. So the cult fuels the MLM, fuels the sales and fuels everything. Because if you think of any MLM, off the top of your head, Mary Kay, Amway, LuLa Roe, whatever, they sell a product that's already out there. All of us right now could be be right back and go get the thing we're thinking of, the lipstick, the leggings, the water filter, whatever it is, we could go get it and be back within an hour, and we'd have it in our hands and we could be using it right now. And there's no pyramid scheme to join. And no one's going to be haggling me 3 weeks from now going, how did you like your water filter? Did you want an air purifier too? Like, it's not going to happen. Right? So there isn't really an inherent need for these companies. The stuff that they're selling is already available. If you just do a little bit of research or said like ketones to drink, like you'll find them. They're there. The reason you see the MLM is because the MLM is now has this like this workforce of unpaid, like promoters. Like you're like promoting some club opening or something, like drink my ketones, wear my lipstick, but you're not getting paid. And so the MLM doesn't have to. I saw that one time somebody was like, MLMs are so great, they don't have to pay for advertising. And I was like, yeah, duh, because you do it for free. Like you're doing it for them right now for free. Now they never have to pay for advertising because all of their reps gladly do it. They wear it like a personality. They paste it all over their social media. So that's why maybe you've never heard of another product that's exactly the same, because it's not posted all over your friends asking you to buy it all the time. But anything that you can buy in an MLM, you're going to be able to find at the store somewhere. You know what I mean? So there's no really inherent need for these companies. And so the cult aspect of being inside the MLM is what keeps it going. Nobody needs a garage full of lipstick except a Mary Kay consultant who's trying to get her check. Because, and then here's the other thing that MLMs do. All of their products have like an expiration date.
Interesting.
So like everything expires. So you're stockpiling all this stuff. And then you're like, oh, all this lipstick's like expired. Like I can't sell expired makeup. So I got to discount it and hope to get my money back, but you're not. So now you're losing money on this too. Like it's this like vicious cycle that nobody really like sees until they see it. And then they're like, oh shit. It's that moment. It's the whole glass ceiling just busting above you going, oh my God. And you see this, like, it's a system. It absolutely is a system. The way that it works. I have an episode on my podcast about the Amway Tools cult, which is like, I think probably the cult that most people in MLM would know is like the Amway, like the tapes and everything. And if you've ever seen the show On Becoming a God in Central Florida, you know about the tapes, listening to the tapes in the car and the whole crash and everything is because of these tapes. And so back in the day when MLMs were becoming legal, there's this guy named Dexter Yeager, and he was in Amway. And he realized that the best way to get people to buy shit was to sell it himself. And if he was selling what everybody else was selling, there was no reason for them to buy it from him. So essentially he was doing these like speaking, and some guy would like record him on a cassette tape. And then they would make a bunch of copies and they'd sell it at the next meeting for like $5 a tape. If you missed last meeting, oh, it's so good, but don't worry, we taped it for you. It's the equivalent of like, yeah, the Zoom will be recorded. Like you can catch the replay. But they were selling it for like $5. And it became very, 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 very profitable. Profitable so much that the people that were selling the tapes were making way more money than they ever would be selling Amway. And Amway was like, we don't like this. Like, you need to quit selling these tapes because it's in competition to us. And Dexter Yeager's like, your business doesn't work without my scam. And I know another business would be willing to be the business that takes up my scam. So either we work together or I find someone else. And Amway was like, okay, I guess we're selling tapes. I mean, it's a little more nuanced than that, but that's like the too long didn't read. Essentially. And there was a meeting at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. And this listener of mine, who's just fantastic, he did he's a historian and he came across this research and he was like, Roberta would love this. So he emailed me and he goes, can I come on the show and tell you about the tool scam? And I was like, yes, this is so amazing. And so it's really cool. We have like the actual call footage because he's a historian and he found all of this stuff. So it's just a really interesting story into like how it works, like from the perspective of like the scammers building it on the back end.
That's wild.
So, you know, it's like very interesting and stuff. Like it's very, it all works. It's all intentional. It doesn't work any other way.
And I think I told you that the On Becoming a God in Central Florida you can't watch it anywhere. It's off the air.
Is it just gone?
You can't find it on Showtime is the one that created it. It's
Right.
not on Peacock. It's not on Paramount Plus. It's nowhere, apparently. I'm like,
Michelle.
why? I'm like, why is that?
We have to figure it out, Michelle.
That is weird to me.
I wonder if Amway has anything to do with that.
It's just a really weird.
The DSA.
Weird, because it was a fantastic show.
It's so good.
So good.
So good. So good. So good. Yeah. I don't know.
Because I was like, oh, I want to watch that again now. I just want to watch, because I was trying to think of the guy's name from the character.
Oh,
who does the tapes, whatever his weird name
Where's
is.
Dave? Yeah, we need Dave. On Becoming a God in Central Florida is like, not only is it not, it's like off the air, like canceled or like ended, but it's not even available to stream.
No, not at all.
So I'm curious. I'm curious if we have any evidence of the DSA or Amway being involved in that sort of takedown. Dave is our friend Dave Vaughn, who probably would already know the answer to this question.
I want to know.
He'd probably be like, yeah, I told you about it 4 weeks ago. And I was like, oh, like it's that sort of thing.
I just thought it was really bizarre because I remember watching it, and I think that for me, I just thought it was so brilliant. But I remember thinking, like, how is this gonna? This is exposing a lot of underbelly. I was talking to somebody. Linda Eve, who follows me, who always is on my Instagram lives. She said she uses doTERRA products daily.
Oh yeah.
Tried the Advocate thing, and it didn't work out for me. Almost fell for another MLM. Called World Financial Group.
Yeah. Well. So here's the thing, Linda. Once I'm an advocate also for, not wasting your money. So once you purchase something and it belongs to you, it seems silly. Like people are like, I threw away all my MLM stuff and rebought everything. I'm like, why? Like, you wasted so much money. As long as the product is good and it's not harming you or someone else, continue to use the product. And when you're done with the doTERRA, check out this company called Revive Oils. They make blends and all of the same exact stuff. They even have all of the doTERRA and Young Living Loop dupes on their website. And it's like, I don't know, like 75% cheaper. Like I've turned so many people onto it. They'll go, let me see. And they're like, oh, what? And I'm like, I know. You're not paying for anybody's upline vacation to Cancun anymore.
And we will have a link to that where you can sign up with our affiliate program and the link to the show.
I was like, Revive Oil, sponsor my show.
Just kidding. So that's interesting. So these companies, because I think for I was telling you, I got involved in an MLM. I was in music school. I want to say it was like 1997. It was long distance. It was Excel. And it was like long distance, and I think I got my adopted father in on it and a couple other people. Then it's just like I got kind of fizzled on it. But there was just like a whole cult of it, and it ended up leading me into investing in a Ponzi scheme. This was 1998. But this is a good ending because it was a whole thing which I won't get into, but essentially I had lawyers for my parents' case and all this stuff. I had invested in this Ponzi scheme, and but I didn't know it was a Ponzi scheme. I didn't even know what a Ponzi scheme was. Right. And then I was selling phone cards, which sounds like a Ponzi scheme, but it wasn't, because I was literally buying time from a company, and it wasn't an MLM or anything involved with that. But the guy that I was working with said, that thing you invested in is Ponzi scheme. And I was like, what is a Ponzi scheme? And he broke it all down for me. So I sent them a letter, and I said,
just so you know,
I gave him a phone call, and I said, so I become aware that you are taking money and then living off that money from our investment and not putting it into the company. Is that true? And they sort of danced around it. And I said, okay, so I don't know what a Ponzi scheme is. I'm 21 years old, 22 years old. I'm like, but I just know that this isn't kosher. And I said, I want my money back. I've been waiting for it. We're supposed to give me back my investment plus principal plus interest or whatever it was for the stock or whatever it was. And they said, well, we can't do that. And I said, okay, that's great. So I sent them a certified letter. And because this is back before email was a popular thing. So I sent them a certified letter. This was like 1999, 2000. I sent them a certified letter, and I put, CC, FBI, and Securities and Exchange Commission. Then somebody else from the company called me after receiving that letter, and basically in a very less than opaque way threatened me and said, you're not going to get your money. Like, or he said, you might get your money, but we're going to break your legs. I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're in California. I'm in Ohio. You're not coming over here. I know that there's many people say, you're only a plane ride away, but you're not coming on a plane. If you're taking money to live on, you're not coming on it. You're not getting on an airplane. You're not going to find it. And I said, that's great. I said, that's great. I said, that's absolutely great. I will, I'll contact the departments tomorrow. Well, wouldn't you know, I got a cashier's check overnighted. And
Yeah, because you squeaky wheeled.
And that's how I squeaky wheeled. And that's how I learned. And I would tell my friends, squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I told everybody, I said, I don't know what a Ponzi scheme is, but this is what these guys are doing. You got to ask for your money. Nobody believed me. So I'm living in California now. This is 10 years later. And I just get this little wild hair at my house. And I'm like, go on Google really fast and type in their names. What do you know? They all went to federal prison. Every single one of them.
There you go.
Guys. And I think they ended up stealing. They had misappropriated like $7 or $8 million worth of people's funds over 10 years.
What in the Bernie Madoff? Yeah,
what in the Bernie Madoff? But it was all they were all MLM people.
Of course they were
talking. They were all talking about this and that, and there's like these gifting boards where people give money, and you have to read the statement, and I give this money over free will. And I was like, yeah, I need my money back out of that too. Like, come on, I just like that's not happening. Yeah. And just all of these things, because obviously somebody gets left holding the bag, right? As Absolutely. With MLMs, get stuck with stockings and whatnot. And, but that was my first taste of a Ponzi scheme, but it all literally was MLM people all down the line. Cause I started looking at all of it. I was like, so this person
wait
did
a
this.
second.
Oh, this person did Amway, which I wasn't really, there was somebody with like Melaleuca or
yeah,
something.
Melaleuca, that's another one.
And on all these things, and like, oh, okay, they do this. And they were all just in this little circle. It was so funny. Oh, good. On Becoming a God in Central Florida can be watched on Fubo. Fubo TV.
Amway doesn't have any ties to Fubo. Like Amway couldn't get to Fubo.
I guess not. But yeah, so that's my like MLM sort of daisy chain story, and it's very.
That's the thing. Like everybody has one. Like everybody has an MLM story, whether it's like their own or like my mom, my friend, my partner, my ex, whatever. Like I think that's what makes it so. It's already like watching a train wreck where you're just like, what is going on? But it's like this scam that you're now like a part of because you're like, oh, I have that product in my house, or oh, my friend sells that. And it like brings you really close to the center of it. And I don't know. I just think it makes it real because you can go, I know that company. I have that. I've used that company. And I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? I think it makes it more personable and more personal, and people are fascinated by that, to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no shortcuts.
No. And it's interesting. I like, even camping, like there were people that, like, well, what do you do? I said, oh, I have a podcast. And people are like, that's your job? I was like, yeah, it is. And they're like, well, what do you talk about? And again, I've got all these strangers I don't know. And I'm like, I talk about scams and frauds. And as their eyes are getting bigger and bigger, and I was like, and pyramid schemes. And this one girl's like, oh, I know who you are. And I was like, shh, don't tell anybody. She goes, she's like, this girl was like, that's where I know you from.
That's funny.
She recognized me from the documentary. And I was like, oh, hey. And she's like, oh my God, I have so many questions. Can I sit next to you? I said, yeah. And we talked like MLM stories like all night. It was incredible. Amway still exists. It is the #1 MLM in the world. Still.
Well, so it's interesting. I was telling my adopted mother this morning. You told me that Amway lobbied Congress, spent millions and millions of dollars lobbying Congress to gain approval to get China into the World Trade Organization. Is that correct?
I mean, sort of, yeah. They were involved. The lobbying efforts were involved. I mean, It goes all the way back to like 1979 when MLMs became legal because they won their case against the FTC. It's very convoluted and confusing. And if you look at the case, you're like, how did this even pass? But basically what happened was Ronald Reagan was the best looking pro-business candidate when Amway became legal. And so the heads of Amway, Richard DeVos and Jay Van Andel, gave Ronald Reagan a ton of money because they wanted a pro-business person in the White House to continue this momentum of MLMs are businesses that the FTC had just said. And so they gave, I don't know the number, I want to say it was like 8 million, and Reagan ended up only spending like 6 million of it. So like they gave him more than he actually spent. And in return, he put Richard DeVos in his cabinet and he made Jay Van Andel the president of the Chamber of Commerce. So the founder of Amway was the president of the United States Chamber of Commerce at the federal level in 1980. Thanks, Ronald Reagan. So when we were in DC, I asked Michelle, I think it was Michelle might not have been there yet, but we went and we had some meetings and the conference and a presentation, but we walked by the Ronald Reagan administration building and I flipped it off. I was so mad. I'm like, I don't like it. And but yeah, so eventually what happened was MLMs are legal, and then we're in the early 2000s and there's a stall in sort of like MLMs, and they wanted new blood. And I think China was one of the only like holdouts of MLM. And so they lobbied and were able to get China added into the World Trade Organization, which opened up trade to China. And Amway rushed in, all of these MLMs rushed in, a bunch of Chinese MLMs started. I might have to let my dog out in a sec. A bunch of Chinese MLMs started because of that. And the Chinese government within like a year or so was like, these are pyramid schemes, like we have to ban them. And Amway sort of came and was like, yeah, but when you say these are pyramid schemes, we have to ban them, you mean like the Chinese ones, right? Like you don't mean the American ones. Like the American ones are fine, right? Here's some money. Do you like money? The American ones are fine, right? And basically they were able to create a law, like a rule where American pyramid schemes are legal in China, but not other ones. It's wild. Like the whole thing is all in Ponzi-nomics by Robert Fitzpatrick. He's incredible. But that book, Ponzi-nomics, is the book, and it really breaks it down. And if you have, it will break your heart because MLMs are bipartisan and like everybody's involved, and the blue and the red, and there's so many people that you're just like, them too. Like it's just really disgusting. It's like looking at who takes money from the NRA. You know what I mean? You're like, oh man, there's so many of them. What? It's that kind of thing where you're just like, oh. And yeah, and it's under the guise of being pro-business, but what these people are doing is they're literally lobbying to like deregulate business and deregulate capitalism, and they're using like MLM as one of the vehicles to do that, and it's just really like gross and disheartening and like bad. So we're trying to get regulation back into it. They've successfully lobbied themselves out of regulation that was literally written specifically for them, and somehow they're exempt from it. So
for now, I'm Collier Landry, and this is Moving Past Trauma. Thanks, y'all.
This podcast is made possible by support from listeners just like you. For exclusive content around this podcast, please consider supporting me via Patreon by going to collierlandry.com/support. Please subscribe via Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from, and please leave us a 5-star review. If you want to see video episodes of this podcast, please check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Collier Landry. You can find links to additional resources in the show notes of today's episode. This podcast is a production of Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Collier Landry.